Okay, I want to start with the feeling. I think it's a feeling that, everyone listening has probably had at some point.
Mm-hmm.
It's that feeling of looking at a problem that is just so overwhelmingly messy
Mm-hmm.
that you just want to walk away. And for me, that has always been cancer.
It is definitely the emperor of messy problems.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because if you ask someone what is cancer, they'll say, oh, it's a disease. But then you look at the news, and it feels like we cure cancer every week in mice.
In mice, right.
But people are still getting sick. It feels less like one disease and more like, I don't know, just chaos.
That is a completely fair way to put it. I mean, if you look at it under a microscope, it is chaos. It's hundreds of different diseases. A lung tumor is not a brain tumor.
Yeah.
And even two breast cancer patients can have totally different outcomes. So for a long time, it really did feel like we were just, fighting a forest fire with a water pistol.
Exactly. But, and this is why we're doing this deep dive, we have a map.
We do.
We are looking at what is, I think, arguably the most important document in modern cancer research. It's the 2026 review by Douglas Hanahan, Hallmarks of Cancer Then and Now and Beyond.
It's a legendary framework.
It is. And I
Yeah.
have to be honest, when I first saw the title, I thought Hallmark sounded like a greeting card company.
Far from it. In this context, a hallmark isn't some sentimental message. It is a specific acquired functional capability.
Functional capability. Okay, so what does that actually mean?
Think of them as superpowers, but the worst kind of superpowers. Hanahan's core argument, and this is what has guided research for 25 years, is that despite all that chaos you mentioned, despite the thousands of different mutations, every single cancer, to be successful, has to acquire the same set of capabilities. It has to learn how to do specific things that normal cells just can't.
So underneath all the chaos, there's a logic.
Precisely. There is a hidden logic. And this 2026 update is huge because it takes us from looking at cancer as just a bag of mutant cells to something, something scarier, but also more fascinating. He calls it an outlaw organ.
That phrase really stuck with me, outlaw organ. It implies there's organization.
Yes.
It implies it's not just broken, it's building something.
That's the entire shift. A tumor isn't just a lump of confused cells. It's a complex rogue system. It builds its own roads, it corrupts the local police force, it hacks the body's communication lines. It tries to function like a liver or a lung, but it plays by its own twisted rules.
Well, if we're dealing with an outlaw, let's look at their playbook. The first hallmark is about growth. I'm guessing this is the engine of the whole thing.
It is. The technical term is sustaining proliferative signaling.
Which sounds very dry.
It is.
But I'm guessing it just means growing when you're not supposed to?
Basically. You have to understand the cells in your body are incredibly polite. They're social. They don't just divide because they feel like it. They wait for a very specific go signal.
Like waiting for the traffic light to turn green.
Exactly. But cancer cells, they don't wait. They figure out how to hotwire the car, they make their own go signals, or they just jam the gas pedal to the floor.
Okay, so when we hear about genetic mutations, is that what's happening? Is the mutation the brick on the gas pedal?
Often, yes. There's a famous oncogene called KRAS. You hear about it a lot in, say, pancreatic or lung cancer. When KRAS is mutated, it's like the ignition switch is just stuck in the on position. The cell thinks it's being told to grow 24/7.
And I saw another one mentioned, MYC.
MYC, that's a master regulator. It's amplified in something like 40% of all tumors. So if KRAS is the gas pedal, MYC is the computer system that's, rerouting all the car's power to the engine. It just reorganizes the cell's entire agenda to focus on one thing, growth.
Okay, but question. If I'm driving a car and I stomp on the gas, there are usually safety features. I mean, my car has emergency braking. Does the body not have that?
It absolutely does. And that brings us to the second hallmark, inactivating growth suppressors. Because you're right, the body isn't stupid. It has genes specifically designed to stop runaway growth.
The brakes.
The brakes. The most famous one is TP53. Biologists call it the guardian of the genome.
Guardian of the genome.
Its entire job is to sit there and watch the DNA. If it sees damage or if it sees the cell growing too fast, it pulls the emergency brake. It stops everything.
So for cancer to work, it has to cut the brake lines.
It has to. In about half of all human cancers, TP53 is either mutated or just deleted. So now you have a car with a brick on the gas pedal and cut bike lines.
That is a terrifying combination.
Heck.
But there was another safety mechanism mentioned that I found really interesting. It was about personal space.
Contact inhibition. Yes, this is fascinating. Normal cells hate being crowded. If you grow them in a dish, they'll divide until they form a single, neat layer, and as soon as they touch each other, they stop. They respect boundaries.
And cancer cells are the rude subway passengers who just pile in.
They have zero respect for personal space. They lose that inhibition and just pile up, one on top of the other, forming that 3D lump that we call a tumor.
Okay, so fast car, no brakes, ignoring traffic, but physics still applies, right?
Yeah.
I remember learning that cells can only divide a certain number of times before they just wear out.
The Hayflick limit, yes. This is the concept of the mitotic clock.
A clock.
Imagine your shoelaces. You know those little plastic caps on the ends?
Aglets.
Aglets, right?
Okay.
Your chromosomes have biological aglets called telomeres. And every single time a cell divides, the aglet gets a tiny bit shorter.
Okay.
Eventually it's gone, the shoelace frays, and the cell either dies or retires. It's a built-in expiration date to prevent exactly this uncontrolled growth.
So how does the outlaw organ get around the expiration date?
It achieves replicative immortality. Cancer cells figure out how to switch on an enzyme called telomerase, and this enzyme basically follows the cell around and rebuilds the aglet every time it divides.
So the clock never runs out.
Never. The cell becomes immortal. It can divide forever.
That is, well, it's ingenious in a very dark way. But okay, let's stick with this outlaw organ city analogy. You can have immortal people, but if you have a city of millions, you need to feed them. You need logistics.
Absolutely. You can't build a skyscraper without plumbing and roads. A tumor can't grow larger than a pinhead without a blood supply. It needs oxygen, it needs nutrients.
And normally the body only builds new blood vessels when it's, what, healing a wound?
Right, but the tumor hacks that process. This is the hallmark called inducing vasculature. It tricks the body into growing new blood vessels directly into the tumor. The process is called angiogenesis.
It's building its own supply lines.
Yeah.
But I read something in this 2026 update that really surprised me. It said they don't always build new roads. Sometimes they just squat.
Ah, yes. Vascular co-option. This is a really sneaky move. Instead of spending all that energy to build new blood vessels, the cancer cells just migrate along the existing ones. They creep along the outside of the blood vessels already there in the normal tissue.
So they're stealing electricity from the grid that's already built.
Exactly. And this is so important because for years we tried to treat cancer by blocking that build new blood vessels signal. But in some cancers, especially in the brain or lungs, the drugs didn't work.
Because they weren't building anything.
They weren't building anything. They were just using what was already there.
That adaptability is frustrating.
Yeah.
And speaking of staying alive, we have to talk about the cell death hallmark. Because normally, if a cell is acting this weird, growing too fast, stealing blood, doesn't the body have a way to just order a hit on it?
It does. It's called apoptosis, programmed cell suicide.
Which sounds dramatic.
It is dramatic. It's a self-destruct mechanism. Inside every cell, there's this constant struggle between executioner proteins and protector proteins.
Like a devil and an angel on the shoulder.
More like a SWAT team trying to breach a door and a security team holding it shut. The executioner's proteins, like BAX and BAC, they want to punch holes in the cell's power plant, the mitochondria, to kill it. The protectors, like BCL2, are trying to stop them.
And I'm guessing the cancer hires a lot of security.
It stacks the deck. It produces huge amounts of the protector protein, so even though the alarm bells are ringing and the cell is clearly damaged, the executioners just can't get to the button. The cell refuses to die.
So it's immortal, it's fed, and it's unkillable. Now let's talk fuel. I've always heard that sugar feeds cancer. Is that true, or is that an oversimplification?
It's true, but it is an oversimplification. This is the deregulating cellular metabolism hallmark. And yes, cancer cells burn glucose like crazy. But what this new review highlights is that they are actually metabolic hybrids.
Hybrids, like a Prius.
Sort of. They don't just rely on gas, on sugar. They can switch fuels. They can scavenge amino acids. They can burn lactate.
Wait, lactate, isn't that a waste product, like the stuff that makes your muscles sore?
Exactly. Normally, cells treat lactate as trash, but cancer cells can recycle it. In fact, there's this concept of metabolic symbiosis. So picture this. One part of the tumor is near a blood vessel getting plenty of sugar. It burns that sugar and dumps lactate as waste. The neighboring cancer cells, the ones further away from the blood, they pick up that trash lactate and use it as fuel.
They're recycling their own garbage to keep the whole colony alive.
It's a perfectly efficient circular economy within the tumor.
That is disturbingly clever. It really reinforces this idea of the outlaw organ not just being a mess, but being a sophisticated system.
And if you think that's sophisticated, we have to talk about the major update in the 2026 paper. the shape shifting.
Yes. This part blew my mind because I always thought, okay, a liver cancer cell is a liver cell that went bad. It looks like one, it acts like one, just evil.
That was the old thinking. We thought cell identity was fixed. Once you're a liver cell, you stay a liver cell. But now we know about unlocking phenotypic plasticity.
Plasticity, so they can change who they are.
They can change their identity completely. Imagine a criminal who realizes the police are looking for a tall guy with a beard.
Right.
So he shaves, he hunches over, puts on a wig.
How deep does this disguise go?
All the way. One method is dedifferentiation. The cell basically travels back in time. It reverts to this primitive stem cell-like state. It forgets it was ever a liver cell. And that's so dangerous because stem cells are naturally tougher and more resistant to chemotherapy.
So you throw a drug at it that targets liver cells, and the cancer says, joke's on you, I'm not a liver cell anymore.
Precisely. And then there's transdifferentiation. That's where an epithelial cell, like a skin cell, decides to become a mesenchymal cell.
A mesenchymal?
Mesenchymal. Think of it like a connective tissue cell. Epithelial cells are like brushes in a wall. They stick together. They don't move. Mesenchymal cells are like repair workers. They can crawl around, migrate, squeeze through gaps.
So the bricks turn into workers so they can escape and spread.
Correct. That is often how metastasis happens. And the scariest part, they don't necessarily need a new genetic mutation to do this. It's epigenetic.
Explain that difference for me.
Okay, so a genetic mutation is changing the hardware. It's smashing the hard drive. Epigenetic reprogramming is just changing the software. It's much, much faster. It lets the cancer adapt to treatment in real time.
It's terrifyingly adaptable. But speaking of things I did not expect to find in a cancer paper, we have to talk about the wow factor, the nervous system.
Innervation, yes. This is the sci-fi horror section of the review.
I read this and I thought I was misunderstanding it. Are you telling me that tumors can plug themselves into our nervous system?
Not only can they need to. We used to think nerves were just innocent bystanders. But it turns out tumors release chemicals to attract nerves. They want them there.
Why? What does a tumor need a nerve for?
Well, in brain tumors, like gliomas, we've now found that the cancer cells form actual synapses with neurons.
Synapses?
Yeah.
Like how thoughts are transmitted.
Yes. The neuron fires an electrical signal, releases neurotransmitters, and the cancer cell literally catches that signal. It's hijacking the electricity of the brain to drive its own growth.
Yeah, that makes my skin crawl. It's hacking the brain.
It is. And in the rest of the body, peripheral nerves can release stress hormones that actually stop the immune system from attacking the tumor. So the nerves are acting like a protective detail.
And speaking of protection, the other unexpected ally.
Yeah.
The bugs, the microbiome.
Yes. The trillions of bacteria in your gut. We now know they are major players in this.
How does a bacteria in my gut help a tumor in my lung?
Chemical signaling. Some bad bacteria can release molecules that suppress the immune system globally. But, and here's the silver lining, this is one area where we might be able to intervene.
How so?
We've seen these incredible cases where a patient doesn't respond to immunotherapy. The drugs just don't work for them. But then they get a fecal transplant.
Which is exactly what it sounds
From
like.
a patient who did respond. And suddenly, the drug starts working. They swapped the bad bugs for good ones, and the immune system woke up.
That's incredible. It really drives home this point that it isn't just a lump problem, it's a whole body ecology problem.
That is the perfect transition to the final dimension of this outlaw organ, the accomplices.
Right, because an outlaw leader doesn't work alone. They have a gang.
The tumor microenvironment. You have to realize a tumor is not just cancer cells. In some tumors, the actual cancer cells are the minority. The rest is just corrupted normal cells.
Who are the main collaborators here?
First, you have the construction crew. They're called CAF's cancer-associated fibroblasts. Normally, fibroblasts heal wounds, build scar tissue, but the cancer tricks them into building a fortress around the tumor. This dense scar tissue protects the cancer from drugs and the immune system.
And what about the police, the immune system?
That's the real tragedy. You have macrophages. Normally, these are the beat cops that eat bacteria and clean up debris. But inside a tumor, they get reprogrammed. We call them TAMs.
They turn dirty.
They turn dirty. Instead of arresting the cancer cells, they start releasing growth factors to help them. They actively shut down the other immune cells, the T cells that are trying to attack.
It's just massive corruption. And the review also mentions inflammation. I always thought inflammation was the body fighting back.
It is, usually. But the review describes a tumor as a wound that never heals. If you have a cut, you want inflammation for a few days to fix it. But chronic inflammation, that's just pouring gasoline on the fire. It provides this constant soup of chemicals that damage DNA and fuel growth.
So we have the outlaw cells, the corrupt cops, the hijacked nerves, the stolen blood supply, and then we have the systemic issues.
Things like
Obesity and aging.
the systemic interactions. This is why lifestyle matters so much. Take obesity. It's not just about weight. Fat cells adipocytes are biologically active. They pump out hormones like leptin and inflammatory signals that circulate through the whole body, basically making the environment friendlier for cancer.
And aging,
Yep.
aside from just having more time for mutations to happen.
It's about zombie cells, senescent cells.
Mm.
As we age, these cells stop dividing, but they don't die. They just sit there, accumulating and spewing out inflammatory junk. This creates a neighborhood where cancer feels very comfortable setting up shop.
It's overwhelming, truly. When you lay it all out like that, the plasticity, the nerves, the corruption, it feels like the cancer is always one step ahead. So I have to ask the so what question. Does this map actually help us beat it?
It does. And the key word in the 2026 review is co-targeting.
What does that mean in practice?
Think about how we used to treat cancer. We'd find one mutation, say, that stuck gas pedal, and we'd give a drug to block just that one thing.
And it would work for a while.
For a while, but then the cancer would adapt. It would switch fuels or shapeshift or recruit more protection. We were playing whack-a-mole.
So co-targeting is stopping the game.
It's hitting the enemy by land, by air, and by sea all at the same time. You don't just bomb the bridge. You send in cyber warfare to cut the comms, you blockade the supply lines, and you arm the local resistance.
So giving a drug for the blood vessels, A&D a drug for the immune system, AND-E a drug for the genes.
Exactly. For example, combining an angiogenesis inhibitor to starve the blood supply with an immune checkpoint inhibitor to unleash the police, it turns out when you normalize the blood vessels, the immune cells can actually get into the tumor better to kill it.
Or using those PRP inhibitors I've heard about.
Right. PIRP inhibitors stop DNA repair. If you use those alongside something that stresses the cell's metabolism, you overwhelm its ability to fix itself. You force it into a corner where its superpowers, its hallmarks, start to fail.
It seems like the future isn't about finding one magic bullet at all. It's about understanding the whole network.
That is the takeaway. We have to stop looking for a simple cure for a complex system. We have to understand the ecology of the outlaw organ.
It's a real shift in mindset. We're not just hunting a single fugitive anymore. We're trying to dismantle an entire crime syndicate.
And thanks to this framework, we have the blueprints of their headquarters.
Oh.
We know where the gas lines are, we know who the corrupt cops are, and we know how they hack the phone lines.
That gives me hope. It's complicated hope, but it's hope.
Knowledge is power. The more we understand the logic, the less scary the chaos becomes.
So here's a thought I want to leave everyone with. We spent this whole deep dive talking about how cancer hijacks the body. It uses our healing, our nerves, our own adaptability against us. It thrives because the environment lets it.
Right.
So maybe the ultimate cure isn't just about finding better poisons to kill the bad cells. Maybe the real victory will come when we figure out how to normalize the environment they live in, to make the body a place where an outlaw simply can't find any accomplices.
Changing the soil, not just pulling the weed, that is the frontier.
Thanks for diving deep with us.
Always a pleasure.